Hello, people. This is welcome to the show, and today we're going to discuss. I got Hootie Russo with me, and I'm going to discuss last night's show with Sammy Gravano, The Last Gangster. We're going to discuss our opinions of it, and remember, these are just opinions, and there are opinions, and it's not mean to attack anybody. We're just going to give an honest opinion of what we thought about the show last night, and that's pretty much it. So, with that, I'm going to bring Hootie in. Hootie, how's it going?
Good. Thank you, Lee.
No problem. I appreciate you coming up. You were here twice last week, and it's very much appreciated.
I'm sure you
So,
probably never thought I'd say happy to be here.
well, last night did you? So did you watch the whole show last night?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even want to, go there today with this. I mean, it's just, yeah, I can't believe how it was done, and I can't believe certain people did it. It was just very. I don't know if I was more, upset that one person didn't speak more or that they only spoke less. I mean, it was just. I thought it was a bad look.
And I guess what you're talking about is Sammy Gravano pretty much was in it most of the times, but then you had quite a few other people. But the billing was kind of messed up 1 through say 5 because I would say last night that Curtis Lewa, Michael Francis, um, Karen Gravano, and who else? Larry Mazza. They all had
Larry Mazza, Karen, Curtis, and Francis probably had all the same billing.
and they pretty much had. And then John Jr. came in, but I couldn't understand what was his point of even doing the show because he came in for a very little part. And if anything, that was like he was on a show where Sammy Gravano banged away at his father quite a bit.
And I was hoping you didn't bring that up because he was only on a small part of it. That's why I said I don't know if I was happy that it was a small part or wanted to hear more. Because listen, the two people you want to hear from, number one, Anthony Ruggiano. People don't realize this. He's probably the most knowledgeable in the way of that knows the most gangsters. He's done 20 something plus years in prison and federal time, state time. So when he did federal time, you're all over the country. He knows bosses and wise guys outside of New York, tons of them. He's Fat Andy's son, and he was so well rounded with John Sr. One of the only guys John Sr. never abused, never picked on, respected him, helped him, and you'd like to hear more of his story. That guy could go on and on and on and on and on. You know what I mean? You know as well. I respect his father immensely. I knew of Anthony as a kid, and he was a respected guy in the neighborhood, and you respected him as a wise guy, actually. So I just and then Junior, it's like, why would he sign on? I didn't really want you to bring him into this because he only had a little part in it, but it's like the Gotti name is supposed to rise above all in this genre, right? Because nobody's bigger than Senior, and you're playing backseat, not even to Sammy, you're playing backseat to everybody that you just mentioned, and none of them are talking good. And you're against the Witsec Mafia, and I think there was 4 people in there that was in Witsec.
Yeah,
you got this Witsec. So for that little part, I mean, it really diluted that name.
Now, if I understand this correctly, John Alite was pushed out of the show at the last minute. Is that correct?
That was news to me as of this morning. And then I couldn't understand if that was true because, like I said, did Junior push him out? Did Sammy push him out? If Junior had him pushed out, because I know they're very good at that. You know what I mean? I'm a victim of being pushed out because they have their way with certain, positions. But I didn't hear of it. I didn't even know. I think A-Light's on a whole other project. I haven't seen him in probably over a year and a half. I couldn't even tell you.
Yeah, I just found it very peculiar. But the problem is when you do those shows, ABC is going to cut a lot of stuff out. But I think that pretty much what they said last night was that the only real last gangster there was Sammy Gravano because they didn't act like any of the other ones were.
Well, I mean, I'm very good with the Francis history. of the family. And to me, Michael was the only real gangster because, he was told to tell on Carmine Persico, and he told them no. A lot of people don't know that. Michael is to me, is one of the most respected guys in the game. He was a captain. He was a made guy. I don't care what anybody says. And he got made, and he got pushed to captain in an era where you got clipped for looking at a guy the wrong way. So you can't fault the guy for that. So to me, he was the only real wise guy on there.
And Ruggiano, a lot of people have not really met him until last night. Yeah. I think he did really well.
And he's got so much more to bring to the table.
And just for people that don't know, explain who his father was.
So Fat Andy Ruggiano was a Mad Hatter. And now people once said that the amount of men that he had around him were more than all the guys combined in the Colombo family at one time. He had a crew, they said almost 400 people. And I tell you, like, I got to meet, the first year that he came home from jail, I got to meet him. Anthony was away. I got to listen to his stories, gave me some advice. He had this kid who was my Gumbada, and he wound up being a piece of shit, rat bastard. But he didn't have no felonies. He's one of those guys that just never got caught, always went under the radar. Red hair, red eyes, and he was, Anthony set him up to be Andy's driver. So I got to hear some of the stories. He got put around Charlie Wagons. And I guess that's probably why John only liked two people in the life, probably Charlie Wagons and Emil Delacroce, besides Fat Andy, because I know he did have a lot of love and respect for Fat Andy, 100%. So Fat Andy got put around Charlie Wagons a lot younger, when John was a lot younger. They said, what are you going to do with this guy? Fat Andy was just running wild, robbing crap games, sticking guys up. And he had a partner named Tony Lee, and they were just, they were Mad Hatters. And they said, straighten him out, put him with you, don't clip him. And Charlie Wagons brought him up, and then he eventually gets straightened out by the Mad Hatter, the high executioner, Lord High Executioner, Albert Anastasia, straightens him out, was his boss. I mean, that's something else. And then he becomes, Albert Anastasia had 1 of 7 bodyguards, and Fat Andy was number 1. And he brought the Cosa Nostra, the suicide mission. He was the guy known to bring that to light. That's where you commit a murder, you clip somebody in broad daylight. And that's who Fat Andy was.
And Fat Andy was related also to Gene Borello. Is that right?
Correct. That's Gene's uncle.
So that's Gene's uncle. Okay. And let's getting back to the show last night. Okay. Sammy said something about chess. And this is one of the first. This is one of the first things that he said. I've heard him say this before, but he said it on ABC right now. And I talked the other day about this guy he's literally reestablished himself because of the generations changing. A lot of people that watch him now don't realize what he did back in the 80s and 90s when he ratted. So he's got a whole different type of people following him now. And even the people that used to call him a rat are following him. So he's redid his image.
I can tell you this. If one, out of respect that Sammy knew that there was going to be a Gotti member on the panel, I kind of would have left that statement out. He's made it on his show where that doesn't matter. And how do you got to feel now that you're against all of that and you're sitting sixth to the guy that did this to your family? You know what I mean? And it's like, how do you even accept that? Do they need the money? The exposure? You definitely don't need the exposure. I'm getting sick talking about this. I didn't want to bring this part up of that show because, like I said, it was only one small part. And that makes it even worse because, and then Sammy just hammered it on Senior. And it was like, wow. Because listen, that's all Sammy has. Sammy doesn't have anything else. Sammy wasn't in the streets. He got promoted real fast after he left the Colombo family. He was either on, when he talks like to sit down with Michael, what are you talking about, Sammy? You weren't in social clubs. You weren't out partying. You weren't doing anything. When he says to Michael, where are you? Now, I got nothing against Sammy, but let's call it what it is. You went home every night to your family. You took off the mask, and you became a father and a husband, like you said at the table. Because I didn't walk up to my dinner table at night and say, I clipped this one or I clipped that one. He made it very clear that he was a sociopath. And I just actually read a book yesterday, and I've read many, but this one definitely explained it, how in Cosa Nostra it works. Like, who knows who he was chopping up, who he clipped, what he was involved in, what he ordered, and he was sitting down to a plate of marigot. Like, didn't even bother him.
And one thing the show avoided, which I wish they didn't, they talked about some of the people that he killed, but they were members of the mafia. They did not talk about an innocent person that was killed by the name of Alan Kaiser. And I thought that ABC had to know about Alan Kaiser, and they just didn't bring it up. It was pretty much left out. So I didn't think it was fair that they brought in victims whose people, they were already in the life. Stuff like that's going to happen to you in the life. But when you're a 16-year-old kid and you get executed on the street, and that wasn't even talked about last night.
Well, I'm not going to talk about it because, from my understanding, they don't have solid paperwork on it. So I can't talk about anything that I don't know. I'm one of them. I'm just that type of person. And that's probably why ABC didn't. There's no solid transcripts, government paperwork, or anything speaking about Sammy pulling the trigger and killing whoever this guy is, ordering it.
When Sammy confessed, when Sammy originally confessed, and I read it, when he originally gave his original confession to the FBI, he said, "I killed Alan Kaiser." He didn't say anything about Louis Miletto. That came out later.
That's what was what I seen.
Right.
That it was somebody else, and he might have been present or might have been known about it, but he had nothing to do with it itself.
There's only a couple people that know, and just one's alive now. And
I don't, like I said, I don't talk about things that I don't know about. You know what I mean? And that's something that's been going wish-wash and back and forth. So it's something I'd leave alone. But I thought they shouldn't even have brought that on itself. You know what I mean? Because I know, like, Vinny Gorgeous tried to use that as a plea deal, and it worked. And it didn't work as a plea deal, but his lawyers used it to get him out of 24-hour lockup. Guys that got it, because he admits to it, and people give Vinny Gorgeous props, but they don't realize he's admitted to being a gangster, to be killing people. Like, he's admitted to this stuff, and people don't fault him for that, because he said, he says, "What, you want to put me on 24-hour lock?" And he goes, "This guy was part of the life. That's what you have. That's what you expect." No civilian got hurt. So bringing guys up or talking about people that were in the life, there was no reason for it. You know what I mean?
And ABC also said that Sammy was the biggest informant ever. Would you agree to that, or do you think they were bigger?
No, Mikey Scars. First, there's two people that know Cosa Nostra the most. One is Anthony Ruggiano. I think right now he's probably the only guy that knows as many guys and the life, probably, and then a close second is Mikey Scars. Sammy kept his mouth shut about things. Frankie DeChico, right? Frankie Locasio. He never came forward and said that he had nothing to do with the hit. The only guy who never got to come home. Everybody else came home on that case or died. He died in jail.
Well, Joe Watts didn't come.
There was a
lot coming home, right?
Yeah, but he had nothing to do with that case.
Okay.
Joe Watts been pinched on. But Joe Watts was pinched on some murder from 25 years ago, and they gave him a sweet deal. I was in jail when he got 4 years. He turned it down and got 12. And then people tell me he's no good. I'm like, he turned 4 down, acted like he was going to go to trial, then wanted to cop out again, and the feds made him take 12. I don't know if he was a cooperator, then he must not be on good terms with the feds. I'm not saying I don't think the man is, because he's a mad hatter. They say he's got. When I was on the streets, they said he had a small cemetery. You can't have a small cemetery and work with the U.S. government. But he had nothing to do with any of John's cases.
So, would you say the best thing for John Jr. to do last night is not even to do that show?
Well, what do you tell me? If I come to you and I'm ABC and I'm saying we're doing a documentary about Sammy, do you want to be on it? What do you say if you got that last name?
Especially being the fact that it was named, it said The Last Gangster, Sammy Gravano.
It's his doc series.
It is.
It was his.
It's just,
and they just wanted it. Now there's so many colorful guys that came out of the woodworks now because this whole YouTube thing. This wasn't happening a year ago, 2 years ago. Now everybody's coming out. You know what I mean? Guys that were hiding are coming out. So they feel let's throw a bunch of wise guys on here. And it was a nice class. They could have made it into a 3-night special. They could have made it because they could have talked to each individual of them a lot longer. What we heard from Sammy, we all heard already. It was an underboss. There's nothing that's been said from Sammy that we don't know.
Well, there's a lot of people that watch ABC that don't know Sammy. That's the whole point of it, I would think.
But I would think they already watched him on YouTube.
No, they're going for a different generation. They're going for that. A lot of people on ABC haven't watched him. Watch his numbers. I'll bet you his numbers will grow up. We'll see. Let's see, watch his numbers and see how far they go. But I think everything that Sammy's been doing is very calculated. And I cannot believe that he's literally reinvented himself. And
I don't know what you mean by that. I don't think he reinvented himself. All he did was take the Gangster and put it in front of a television.
Well, when I say reinvent himself, he has gone from being a big rat, the worst enemy of everybody, on the front page of every newspaper, to now a lot of people don't consider him a rat. A lot of people believe that he ratted because of what John said on the tapes.
Well, say that. Don't say they don't think he's a rat. They know he's a rat. They're just justifying it now.
Young people don't know he's a rat.
Yes, they do.
No,
I speak to young people all the
time.
time.
If you talk about say a young wife at home, and he gets all sorts of people to watch his show, she knows nothing about Sammy Gravano. She was born in the late 1990s, and she's watching that show. She doesn't know nothing about Sammy Gravano.
100% she does. Sammy says it in every episode that he's a rat. He said it in the Michael sit-down, Lee. Watch how many times he says, I'm a rat. I'm a cooperator. I'm an informant. He says it in 7 different ways. And
I'm sorry, I disagree. I disagree with you. I think anybody that was born in the 90s that don't know about Sammy being a rat, don't care he was a rat, don't even look at the rat label like people from our generation do. But that's you could say that. You could say that they don't believe in the word rat, but they know if anybody's ever watched an episode, they know he told on John Gotti Sr. And look what they played.
They don't know anybody else he's told on.
Then they played the tape last night, which didn't make Gotti look good, when he's saying what he's saying on it. I mean,
that's the reason why. Listen, if they would have told a Gotti family member, do you want to go on and have a debate, like a sit down the way Michael Francis did with Sammy?
That's what I was.
That's when they do. That's when they should. That is something they should have accepted. Not, do you want to be on a panel of 9, and it's all about Sammy? Because Sammy, again, if anybody watches Sammy, every story's the same. He doesn't have anything new. He's not been around since '89, and even before that, when guys are captains and guys are high up and their meeting spot is their construction company, not the social club, and they're not sitting playing Scala and hanging out. They don't know the everyday stuff of wise guys and street guys. They can become diluted. They actually think they're businessmen. And Sammy was that guy. That's why when they did the sit down with Michael, and I'm like, what is he talking about? He wasn't on the streets. You know what I mean? He went from the boxing gym to his construction company. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm going to be honest with you. When Sammy was active, he was the most feared guy in the city. And I can tell you that. I lived it. I was on 101st Avenue. The name Sammy the Bull was feared. And he was a tough guy. He knew how to box. I know that he boxed with the Bilotti. He was very close with the Bilottis. The Bilottis were all tough. One of the older brothers was a trainer. Sammy was close with the whole family. They all worked out at a certain gym in Brooklyn. I knew a lot of guys that worked out in there that were killers, older guys that were, and Sammy would run out of guys to box. And Sammy used to keep a crew around him. And he used to send guys out into the gym, telling other guys to tell guys to come box. And I noticed one guy, he's doing 12 years in a murder right now. The guy's a lunatic. And he says, he sent somebody over. I don't want to mention who he sent over because the guy's always a nice guy. Nah, he's a sicko. And he said, Sammy wants a box. He wants you to get in the ring. He goes, nah, I got to go. My wife's waiting. He said, I made an excuse. He goes, what am I going to do? He goes, I could kill Sammy because I can't kill. The guy keeps 15 killers around him.
Well,
how am I going to do that?
You know who the Teddy Atlas is, right?
Oh, yeah, well, there's that whole big beef I heard.
He said that that Sammy was a mediocre boxer, but the guys didn't fight back. They let Sammy win.
That's why this guy didn't want to. He said, if I would have beat Sammy up, he goes, I got to worry about because Sammy was smart. Sammy didn't keep you in his crew if you weren't a killer. And if you didn't earn money, you weren't around them. The guys that were around him every day were killers. And the guys that were with him, that weren't with him every day, all made money. That was Sammy. And Sammy made sure of that. And, he did know the rules. Now, did he apply them when he was earning money? No. But, there was a big thing when they were at dinner one night, and it was very rare because Sammy never went out. That was a known thing. Sammy would go home. He wouldn't spend a lot of nights out with the guys. He didn't do the social club thing unless he would go see John or Neil, anybody he had to talk to. And there was a talk, and he was gone. But there was a time when somebody went to walk over and shake Sammy's hand, and Sammy wouldn't take his hands out of his pocket, and he nodded towards John, which is the right thing. Usually, when you walk in a club or you walk in a room, I don't care if you got to get to the third room. You shake nobody's hand until you get to the most powerful guy, the highest ranking guy in the room. If there's a captain in there, you're going to go over to the captain and say hello first. You're going to, beeline it and then say hello to everybody else afterwards.
Would you say last night was a success for Sammy?
Absolutely. It was a home run for him. Wow. To get them on there and then to get somebody with the Gotti last name on there, that I'm even sick of saying it. Oh, my God. He hit it out of the park. I would have said he hit a triple.
And the
pot's only this big. It's a tiny pot. But just having him on there with the name on the billing and him being like 6, 7, 8 billing on it, Sammy hit it out of the park.
And not only did he get a Gotti on, he got the Gotti that was a made man. I mean, and
no, it's not only that. The guy that wants to start the Witsec Mafia.
Yeah.
No, he wasn't a made man. He was a boss. Yeah, remember when I was on the streets, we looked at Junior, and if he didn't want to say hello to you, we didn't say hello. He was the boss.
Yeah, I knew he was a boss.
No,
I was just saying he was a made man.
Yeah, he was a boss. And he was a real boss. You know what I mean? Like, let's not play it as he was daddy's boy. No, he was a boss. 100%. And let's not take that away. I was with the Gambino family my whole life. John Jr. was a boss. And that's why I'm saying Sammy hit it out of the park.
How many years was John Jr. the boss?
Short-lived. Peter took over right away, the uncle. Right? As soon as when he went to turn himself in. After he spoke to his father, he took the right. They had that conversation where he told him not to do it. The feds are going to keep coming. 96, 97, right? Whenever he took that plea deal, I wasn't there when Pete got named boss, but it was right away because I remember getting called down to the Bergen on Saturdays because Pete used to have everybody come around on Saturdays the way John used to do the Raven Night while John was still alive. When he was doing his time at Marion, Pete, in love of his memory, not being on the streets anymore, would call for all the guys on the streets to come down to the Bergen hunt on Saturday afternoons. So I remember getting the call to go to the Bergen, and we knew Junior took the plea.
Do you think that Junior, after the show last night, probably feels like he was blindsided?
Absolutely. I got to think so. He's a smart. Listen, Junior's one thing. Yes, he grew up probably street smart because of his father, but he was well educated. He went away to private school, academy school. Very smart, very, very smart. Reads a lot. Very into, Machiavelli's like his father. The war. The American Indian War legends, and very, very smart. I don't think if he thought that's the way it was going to turn. Well, I don't think if he thought Sammy would have mentioned his father, he would have ever signed on for it. That's my thoughts. He would have never signed on for it.
Yeah, and to me, that was the major thing. I couldn't believe when I was watching it, just to see all these people getting top billing over him.
Believe me, Lee, I'd rather be here talking about something else tonight. I can't believe it. I mean, I'm glad I got to see Anthony. Michael, of course, narrating, genius, smart. I mean, the guy's got this, he's got this whole thing. Forget about the mob genre. He's got the whole, interviewing movie stuff. He's got this whole thing down pat. I mean, even Karen, I thought it was like a shot from mob wives. When he used to just go off to the side and let them talk. She was talking all the way through. He had Sammy's kids. He hit it out of the park for Sammy.
And after that, would you say Anthony was a winner from the show last night too?
Now I think people are going to start asking, who's this Anthony Ruggiano? He's got to get a show. And that's what I've been waiting for because, he did a sit down with Michael Francis, and maybe it was his first time he was talking over because he had story after story after story. I mean, he was telling Michael about 1,000 times that he met his father, he met him, and Michael didn't remember any of it. Like Anthony probably got to marry me like an elephant. I don't know or not, but He's got a ton of knowledge about Cosa Nostra, and he can like like I said, I didn't know Anthony on a personal level. I got to meet his father the year he came home. But other than that, I knew him as being, we were told to treat Anthony as a wise guy on the streets because that's the level of respect that he did have. Because we did know, I do know personally that they did, put him up a few times to get straightened out.
I like to, what I'm wondering is if John Jr. knew that some of his arch nemesis, Curtis Lewa,
oh my God, I thought we were going to skip that. Maybe we could get over that.
Well, Curtis Lewa showed up and really blasted him pretty hard.
The guy testified out of what? 2-3 trials of the 4 on top of the 5. He didn't get, the IRS trial was the 5th one. Cost him $5 million in trials, life in prison on all of them, the needle on some of them. And then you got Curtis Lewa outside with 100+ protesters at every one of the trials, besides the ones he testified against him in. That's insane. I got to think he wasn't told who was on the bill. I got to think that now.
Yeah, I don't think there's no way he would have showed up if he knew it was going to be like that last night. I just don't think he would have done it.
Well, listen, everybody was once or twice, either one of them, they were in WITSEC or they were crime fighters, something he's supposed to be against. So I can't see him getting the list of people and saying, yeah, I'll do this. Yeah, and then seeing the finishing act, they had to know. He had to know he only had that little part. They really had to. There's no way he only spoke for 2. He had to have a ton of material that they threw on the cutting room floor.
That's what they do.
I don't know if I said this, but I watched one day a very famous actor talking about him and Jennifer Lopez in a love scene, like dead out sex scene. And now, who wouldn't want to see Jennifer Lopez in a fucking sex scene, right? They cut it out of the movie because the guy was telling David Letterman, it was on a late night show, and he was telling David Letterman was like, I didn't see that in the movie. And the guy's like, yeah, it never made the cut. So, that just goes to show you, if they could throw a sex scene out with Jennifer Lopez, they'll throw anything on the cutting room floor.
Yes, and I got a feeling they threw a lot of, only John knows what he said and what was cut out, and ABC. So it'd be interesting to know. He's not. I got the feeling knowing. I would think that John Jr. would not even talk about this after what happened last night.
Oh, well, somehow we'll become the bad guys. I can tell you that because this is definitely the 2 people I didn't want to come up. One, because John didn't get that much speaking time, and Silva, I don't even know what he was doing there.
Well,
I'm just not. That's just not know why.
I watched the show last night that talked about, but they were talking about that person's totally pro Gotti, and they weren't giving an honest opinion of everything that happened last night. This, whether people like it or not, this was a big home run for Sammy, and this was not good for John Jr. It doesn't matter what anybody thinks, whether it's me saying or not. I'm sorry, just go watch it. The reality's there. And
well, you got to remember, this isn't A&E. This isn't the Discovery Channel. This isn't whatever other channels, the ID. This is what? ABC. Let's not forget it, right? The daughter son company of Disney. Yeah. Like, let's talk what it is. You know what I mean? It's probably going to be syndicated. How about that?
It's on Hulu.
They're probably going to play it. Yeah. Oh, there you go. Forget it.
I turned on Hulu. That. I turned on Hulu today. Guess what? The number one thing was on Hulu. That
was the number one thing?
It was as soon as I turned it on, Hulu has it already. So that's going to be seen by so many people. That is going to You got everybody clicking on that today.
I already said that. Myself, I thought that about just ABC. I didn't know they sold to Hulu already.
Yeah.
It happened last night.
Well, I think Hulu's part of ABC and Disney.
ABC owns. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. ABC is the biggest network in the country, probably in the world. They own everything. There's nothing they don't own. Disney. Well, the truth of the matter is Disney owns ABC. Disney's the parent company. Disney owns everything.
And you know what?
I don't even know why they could do a show like this.
And you know what you think about, though? It used to be in the old days, like when Sammy did his interview years ago, that wasn't everywhere. The day it was over, it was over. Now it's not over. It goes on to Hulu and it's there forever.
Well, not even that. On demand. You go to ABC On Demand now.
Yeah.
Back in the day, if you didn't tape it with your VCR, play, record like we did, once it was over, it was over. You can never get it again.
I'll tell you what, Sammy's leaving a legacy, whether people like it or not. I mean, between his shows that he's
Oh,
doing
he's
this
doing phenomenal.
podcast,
He's doing
and
phenomenal.
if he say he's able to do this for another 2 years, that means he's going to drop another 30, 40 podcasts. He's probably going to drop a bunch more specials. So when the man leaves this earth, his legacy is not what it used to be. You know, it's there. You know, he could turn the truth around with his show. He could literally, and he has. I've watched him where he's talked about things. There's no way it happened that way, but Sammy says it, so people think it's true, especially younger people.
I listen. Sammy's a giant in this business.
Yeah.
I don't like to talk about him, but I was around. I was around in the '80s. I was around in the '90s. I know what went on, and I know what stories that can be true and not true, and some stories I don't know at all. So
This is like Twilight Zone because in the '90s, where you were. I was in New York in the '90s, and I remember on the front page of the Daily News and the Post, they had Sammy the Rat all over it. And now, it's like I just can't believe that.
there's
Then he
rap
gets,
songs about him.
yeah, and then he
The
gets
one kid made a rap song about him in Staten Island.
yeah,
The feds followed him. He was a bank robber. They pinched him for robbing a bank
yeah.
because he made a song talking about Sammy being a rat. Come on,
And,
there's songs about it. I mean, that's just if anybody even knows it, there is still libraries out there, and you can get a lot of information out of the library.
and his kids used to be ashamed about who their father was, and that's changed.
And you know what? That's something I didn't know. I always thought they looked up to him before they found out he was a gangster and after they found out he was a gangster. That's just something that I thought, and I've heard from more than a few people.
Well, and Karen was very, very honest last night, and she said that her father was a psychopath, and he's always been a psychopath. He's going to die a psycho. I mean, she was blunt and to the point, and she didn't like.
Well, I mean, the guy sat there in the interview and told you. He goes, "What did you want me to do? You wanted me to come home, sit down at the dinner table, and tell you I shot today? What is that? Forget about psychopath. Psychopath's nothing. What's worse than a psychopath?"
And people don't realize Gerard
You know,
Gerard did some hard time in prison. He did a good sentence.
Like I said, he's a narcissist and a sociopath. That's what's worse than a psychopath. Psychopath goes on a rampage and then eventually gets killed or gets the needle or go. These guys are cunning, calculating, narcissist sociopaths. And again, to Gerard, I don't know him personally, but from what I know from him living in Staten Island and going out to Arizona, he's a stand-up guy. If anybody says anything bad about his father or his family, he has no problem fighting them. He did 9 years? How about a guy that wasn't even his son-in-law, just his granddaughter's father did 9 years for that case.
Yeah.
Stood up for Sammy. Stood up for the mother. It was really the mother. They were threatening to put the mother away. That's why everybody took all that time. And they were threatening to put Karen away. And Karen and the mother got away with it. I think Karen got probation. And Gerard, the daughter, the granddaughter's father, and Sammy took all the weight.
And no matter who attacks what happened with this show last night, they got to be honest about one thing. It's like you said, it wasn't a good look. It wasn't a good look for John to be on the show, and it was a great look for Sammy to be in control of the show. And he must have sat down with ABC and negotiated and said, "Look, this, and this." Our ABC came to the conclusion that Sammy was more popular than John Jr., and let's go with Sammy.
Well, listen, Sammy's up there in age. He's making a ton of money right now. He's not going to do a project unless it's on his terms, regardless if it's Disney or if it's HBO. Yeah, beat it. I'm making that money here on my YouTube channel, and it's continue making it when I'm gone. I'll leave these shows up with 700,000 viewers, and the checks will still come in from YouTube when I'm not here.
Could you imagine?
If you're Sammy, they come to you. We're going to name you the last gangster ever in the history of gangsters. That's what that means. Like, he's the last gangster ever. That's it. It's obsolete because, the life's obsolete. There is no such thing as a real gangster. I mean, that's what they're trying to say. So who is the last gangster? And that's pretty crazy for ABC to say that, because if you want to talk about who's the last gangster standing, it's Michael Francis. Because a lot of people don't know this, but he was threatened to cooperate and testify against the boss, Carmine Persico, and he told him, no, I'm not doing it. Put me back on myself. He never did it. So to me, that was the last gangster. But they want to say Sammy? How?
A lot of
How?
people,
You
a
can't
lot
call
of
a guy
people
a
would,
gangster like
a
that.
lot of people would argue on the Michael Francis thing.
Of course, because they don't know. I
Right.
know the Francis name and the Francis family going back, like, again, Sonny was the first wise guy's hand I've ever touched. So I can tell you they're wrong. Was Sammy a gangster? 100%. But what'd he say? When he got the 5 years and he turned U.S. government informant, cooperator, he says, it's it. My life's over. I moved to Arizona. I'm not being bothered. I'm a legitimate guy. Now you get pinched on another case. You do what? 17 out of 19, 19 out of whatever. Now you come out, you make a show about your book that you wrote way back when you were, during your testifying years, and you're a gangster again? No, it doesn't work that way.
And ABC last night, what they did is they played the worst part of that tape with John Gotti talking about Sammy, and they really edited it down. They didn't play the whole thing. They gave it no explanation. It did not give John Gotti a good look. That's
Well, our generation, we all seen that on A&E 1,000 times.
But the problem is, a lot of generation didn't see.
You're right. I'm right. I'm agreeing with you about that.
And
you know what I mean? But listen, Sammy's tapes haven't came out yet. They've been holding on to tapes, and maybe the government's holding them tight. I don't know. But there is tapes. They do exist from 20-something years ago.
Yeah, but
whatever it was, 30 years ago.
They're probably not going to release them until he dies. No, in the government.
But he's got his own tapes with his own dirt. You know what I mean? Let's not, and let's
Oh, without a doubt.
John's the boss. John can say whatever he wants. Bottom line. And did John know he was being recorded? No. And the truth of the matter is, when the underboss, if Sammy wasn't, or the consigliere comes to you and says, you got to take one for the family. Them's the rules. Them's the rules. So I don't care what was said on tape. You're in the life. And guess what? John is not the life. John's a piece of a puzzle. And the number one rule that's always been said, and this is the problem with bosses and underbosses, not one person is bigger than the life. So regardless what John said, and you want to get back at John, no, you're getting back at the life. The life that you took you took the oath to. You didn't take the oath to John. We don't care. Come home in 30. Or if you got that much power in the streets, send people after John. Don't use that you can't use that, I'm a street guy. I know the business. Nobody's bigger than the life. If you want to cooperate, you're not cooperating because what somebody did to you. The life is bigger than that. John didn't straight Sammy out. Sammy was probably a captain before John. I don't even know. You know what I mean? Sammy was with Carlo and Paul. He was with that fraction. He was with the Colombos. He was so respected that he didn't get clipped. He got passed over. They don't, usually in those days you get clipped. They don't put you with another family. The only times I've seen that happen that I know, I know a few, but the big ones were the Gemini twins, got pushed out of the Gambino family for helping clip Roy DeMeo, and they got put with the Lucchese family, and Sammy with the Colombo family. Those are the two big ones. There was more, but that usually doesn't happen. With a guy like Sammy, they would have clipped him. They would have said, we can see the trouble coming from this guy a mile away. And Carlo was involved at the time. I mean, Carlo died in 1976. So I'm pretty sure it was before that. Carlo, I couldn't see wanting to take on a headache, but they did. So Sammy had to be a serious guy.
Yeah. So, okay. So before we close this out, we're going to get down. Let's just give the closing out for the show that happened last night. Here's how I look at it. It was on ABC last night. A lot of people watched it. I'm anxious to see what the ratings were, but a lot more people are going to watch it on Hulu. A lot of people. So it's not something you can hide anymore. And it's going to be out there. It's going to change image about a lot of things.
And he got it now. If ABC is calling you the last gangster, Sammy can retire tomorrow and never hear from him again, and he goes out on top. Because let's
Amazing.
call it what it is. The last gangster was John Gotti Sr. End
Yeah.
of story. When you want to talk about a gangster, you want to talk about the real deal guy. I don't care what he did. I don't care what he said. He lived by his persona. He lived by his words. He just didn't talk them. His actions actually spoke louder than his words, and his words were loud. John Gotti Sr. was the last gangster. Then if John Gotti Sr. didn't exist, then maybe Sonny Francis. Then before Sonny Francis, let's talk about Frank Costello and Al Capone. That's it. ABC dubbed Sammy Gravano the last gangster. It's done. It's cemented. That will be forever cemented because I don't care what shows do what. That's ABC. That's prime time.
Yep. Exactly. And it's like I said, that's going to be in the library forever. Hey, Hootie, is there anything you want to talk about before we close this out? Your show?
I gotta say, Lee, I probably wouldn't have came back on for a part 2. Nevertheless, been here to do this episode with you. I definitely wouldn't have did this episode in the past because I definitely didn't want to speak about certain people. I didn't know that we were going to be brought up, but I think you've come a long way in this genre. Congratulations on 3,000.
I appreciate
I'll see you at 10. I'll see you at 10. That's when we'll start making moves at 10,000. And I think you're going in the right direction. Listen, I don't care if you weren't around the life. I don't care if you weren't with a wise guy. If you're putting out true crime content, you're good with me. If you don't, I'm coming for you.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate everything you've done. You've been part of the show a big time for the last week. And you just take care of yourself, and I'll talk to you soon, my man.
Absolutely. Take care, buddy.
Take care, everybody. Okay, well, that was I should have said goodbye first. I appreciate everybody. Please sub and hit my like button and stuff. I appreciate it. I brought Hootie in because I wanted to talk to him about the show last night. Listen, I don't have an agenda about insulting anybody or anything. But the reality is, we seen the show last night. It was a Sammy coming out party show at the age of 77, Sammy's coming out party. He went to a different type of crowd last night. You know, the average listener on ABC is 35 years old. That's the number one demographic on that channel. And Hulu is a younger people too. So now that show's on there. Sammy Gravano's literally overnight has changed his image of who he is. And now he will go down as the last gangster, whether people like it or not. Thank you all. I hope that you enjoyed this. Take care, people.